frankly, it's a much deeper core of the business than saying that, you know what, by solving this problem, I'll make so much money. So let me solve this problem. Yeah. Versus saying, this is a problem that exists, which I want to solve. Okay. And then you add the monetization to it. Then you're actually creating something of far more value to your customer. Oh, I think it's time we can start charging clients. That's when our business model started, our revenue model started. They were like, are they really serious about their career? We don't want to hire kitty party women. Oh, we had hired a mother, but then she left, so now we don't hire mothers. We heard all of this. And I go out there and I just hear no. Our revenue we saw was dwindling. Eventually it had gone down to zero and we had to cut our losses as much as we could. And that was a very, very tough decision to make.
I can imagine.
I mean, those are those moments where you hate being a founder. Oh my God, there's one company who told me that, you know, we have figured out the exact right age that you should hire women. You know, if you hire them too young, then they get married. If you hire them right after they get married, then they'll have their first child. Then they'll have their second child. Then...
Hello and welcome to the Clueless Founder, the show made for folks who are just starting on the wild journey of building their own startup. Think of it as a no BS real-life guide to the nitty-gritty of the startup life. Making pesa, raising pesa, finding partners, and even dropping partners. We're here to break it down one episode at a time. Today we're talking to Neha Bagaria. Neha started her first startup as a senior at Wharton and is now on her third venture. It's called HerKey and it just raised $4 million to solve the biggest obstacle to India's GDP, women's employment or lack thereof. But more on that later. But first, we're going to cut through all the startup hype to unpack the biggest question all of us have to ask ourselves. Should I really be a founder? That's a far more profound question than it sounds. So let's get to it. Okay, so let's just start with the most basic question. Like, why would you become a founder? Your first startup, you were an undergrad. You were what, senior?
No, yeah, absolutely. It was during the senior year of my college life.
Right. So tell me the year now.
2003, Jan.
Okay. So what were you thinking? You're going to be the next Mark Zuckerberg? Like, oh, you know, here I am.
Mark Zuckerberg wasn't, so the Facebook wasn't there then.
Oh, so you wanted to be like the pre-Mark Zuckerberg.
Right. The Mark Zuckerberg.
The Mark. He would have been a Neha Bagaria.
That's right. No such thoughts at all, Lakshmi. So it's really strange. I mean, I really just chanced upon entrepreneurship as kind of a fallback option in a way. You know, I mean, I had gone to Wharton to study finance. You know, I loved the world of finance. You know, I loved the whole deal making. I loved M&A. I loved banking. When I went in, I thought, okay, when I graduate, I'll either do banking or consulting because that's what every Whartonite did. Now, during that summer of 2002, which is the crucial summer between junior year and senior year, that's when you do that internship, which will finally land you the job, right? And this is 2002. That means it's a year after 9/11. And it was impossible to get jobs on Wall Street. So I hustled and bustled and tried really hard and managed to somehow get myself a summer internship at CSFB. At that time, it was CSFB.
Right.
And I was thrilled. Okay. And, you know, I went to New York to start the summer internship. And a month in, I hated it. I just hated it. I mean, I was like,
why?
I just
because you like finance. So
I still love finance.
Yeah, so it wasn't the work.
No, it wasn't the work. It was just the premise of just making money from money. You know, I felt that I wasn't doing enough of value. I wasn't creating enough value. You know, I mean, I loved all the Excel keyboard shortcuts I learned, by the way, during that summer. I still use it. Yes. And of course, the people you meet and the networks you build, but it just wasn't enough for me. And I cut short my summer internship, came back. And So during my whole senior year, I started thinking about, okay, then what is it that I want to do?
Right.
Because then I realized that no, I don't want this job. And I was qualified for that job. And I knew that I didn't want to get into the finance world, which I had geared myself up for
I know.
all my life. Exactly. So then I started thinking, okay, so what do I want to do? And and this is something I found out later that my brother and I have in common. We always have a list of ideas that we keep writing.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I didn't know that we both have this, Chaska, which is just like stuff we see around us where we feel that, hey, that's an interesting problem to solve. We write it down. And I kind of like opened that list and I started adding to that list. I started creating one pager business plans, like one pagers. Okay. And I started shooting them off to my mentor then, and my mentor now, who's my dad. Okay. And I would basically say, nah, this is a bad idea. Nah, that is terrible. Nah, this won't work. And blah, blah, blah. And that went on my senior year first semester. And finally, I remember it was, January of my last semester where I had a voicemail from my dad. And he said, you know what? I really like that idea that you sent. And so I decided, okay, fine, let's try it.
And the idea was?
To bring the advanced placement program back to India. Again, I really feel like, so frankly, for me, it was all about how do I find problems that I want to
And why
spend
was
time
it a
solving.
problem if people don't know advanced placement?
Oh yeah, sure, of course, absolutely. No, so I discovered advanced placement only when I went abroad to study. And I found out that, hey, what the hell, all these kids around me, these American kids, were placing out of so many classes in college versus us Indian kids, who, by the way, knew more.
Right.
Okay. Who knew much more math and accounting and stat and all of that coming into college. We had to repeat all those classes in college
Right.
just because we didn't get credit for whatever we had studied in our Indian systems. Yeah. And then my brother, my cousins, they were on their way. They were in high school when I was finishing off, and they were again not going to get credit, right? And I realized that, guess what? I mean, this is a really big gap, because people are wasting some serious time, money, and effort when they come to American colleges without getting these credits, right? It was something as simple as that.
Right.
And so I started researching it. I found out that there is no advanced placement testing center in India. So I met the College Board in New York and became.
You just went
yeah,
as
well, yeah, I dropped them an email and I said, hey, you know what? I'm graduating. I'm going back to India. I would like to take the APs back with me. And they were like, okay.
Oh, wow.
And I had a few meetings with them and I became the College Board representative for India at 21.
Oh, wow.
And I came back. I started this off. I had no idea what to do. I had no team. I was everything, right? I used to answer the calls and I used to set up the meetings, and then I used to interview teachers, my past teachers, and then when the parents would come and meet me, they would be like, but you look the same age as our kids do. And that's how I started. I started by like step by step, brick by brick, and I absolutely loved the journey. And
So
actually, what I realized that I loved the most about it was the impact that it created for those kids. Yeah. I mean, it was kind of like a training center. So from a profitability point of view, it was profitable from day one. Yeah. But these kids, they were getting into Harvard and Stanford and Yale and getting scholarships, and getting credits when they go there. Like, it was incredible to see the difference that it was making. And that's what,
So that's
what
the
really
drug.
kept me. Yeah, you're right. That's when I got addicted to that drug.
So let me get this clear. You basically decided on a career, it didn't work out, so you just went to your little list.
That's right.
And the list, and kept passing it by your father, and he said, okay, that
No,
one.
no, and okay, that one.
Yeah.
Yes.
So then why did you stop doing that? Then what did you do?
Well, so this is where, a typical woman's career life gets interjected by life stages.
Right.
And it was 2 years into Paragon. That was the name of the company. And by the way, because I had named my company while I was still in college, when I came back, I found out that Paragon Chappals exist. Okay, I did not know that. Anyway, so 2 years into the Paragon journey, I was actually looking at franchising it and taking it to different cities in India.
Right.
And as luck would have it, I met a Bangalore boy and I got engaged a week after I met him. married 6 months later,
Oh dear.
and moved to Bangalore.
Huh.
And because it was an offline center, it got really difficult for me to keep it running as well as I expected it to run while I was in Bangalore. And so I finally came to a very, very difficult decision one day where I said that, you know what, I would rather kill it myself than see it dying slowly. Yeah. And I shut it down.
Right.
Also, my husband's family business was in a mode of expanding to Sweden and to the US and all of that. And now again, back as somebody who loved finance, it was a great opportunity to be on this side of an M&A deal.
Right.
So I said, you know what, okay, let's try this out, right? I left this world and now there's this opportunity. Let's jump
Right.
into it and see where that takes me. And that's when I joined Kimball. That's the pharmaceutical manufacturing company.
Oh, so you came back to finance, but like this
Yes.
roundabout way.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it was very exciting. I absolutely loved it. Okay. But even though I started off from finance, because it's a family business, you get involved in a lot of different things, right? So frankly, even if it's not something you have founded, you're pretty much a next gen entrepreneur, because you get involved in operations and marketing and HR and management in general. And I did that for 5.5 years and enjoyed it.
And then?
But
then came the children.
Then came the next life stage.
Babies.
Exactly. So I got done with the marriage and mobility, and now came the motherhood. Again, completely unprepared and unplanned. Okay, I mean, I actually hadn't even packed up my desk. I told everyone I'll be back in 40 days. I worked till my 9th month, and I was like, okay, once the baby comes out, after 40 days I'll be back. Yeah, our baby gave birth to a mother. And 40 days later, I said, no way. I need 3 months. 3 months later, I said, I need 1 year. By the time 1 year was over, I was a raging full-time mom. And I said, my mother had been a full-time mom. My mother-in-law was a full-time mom. Almost all the women around me, had stopped working once they had babies. And I felt I needed to do that for my children. Otherwise I would be a bad mother.
Oh, right.
And that's when I decided to take a break from work. And I had, again, no idea how long that would be. Actually, at that point, I thought I would stop working till my second child went to full-time school. Exactly.
That would be how many years?
I don't know. Now when I think about it, I'm just like,
wow, really?
Technically, yeah, that would have been technically 8 years because I had my second kid 3 years after my first one. And it takes them 5 years.
So you just decided, and obviously you'd come back to your family business. I mean, that would be the obvious thing.
Yeah.
Because no one else is going to give a woman who took a 8-year break, right? Yeah. A great job, or at least bet on her intelligence. They know you. But still, I mean, that's a huge risk, right?
Yeah, but at that point, it seemed like that was the expected thing to do. Frankly, nobody was surprised. The only person who was really upset about my decision was my dad. Right? I think he called me on a weekly basis during that break. When are you getting back to work? When are you getting back to work? I kept telling him, what do you mean?
But he wanted that daughter back with the whole, list of ideas.
Exactly. Yeah. And I did this for 3.5 years. I was a full-time raging mom.
Okay. Baby, and then the second one is born, what, 2 years later?
3 years later.
3 years later.
Exactly.
Okay. At least you gave yourself 3 years. Yeah. But then just when you're ready to go back, you have the second child, really?
I wasn't planning to go back at that point. No, the second, it was all planned.
So then so why startup? Now your mummy hormones are raging. You have 2 children. I mean, it seems suicidal to do a startup.
But I didn't at that time. Frankly, I don't think I would have had the confidence to do it right off the bat. Yeah. I actually, when I went back to work, exactly what you said, I chose the easiest thing that I could jump back into, which was the family business. Yeah, I'd done that for 5.5 years. I knew exactly what they needed. They knew what I could do, right? And I could do it flexibly. So for the next 1 year, I actually worked part-time. And I did, hybrid. Even this is pre-pandemic. Yeah. Where I managed to carve out a hybrid role for myself.
Right.
And trying to figure out how to make this balance work, right? My kids were 6 months and 3.5 years old when I jumped back. But that year was a complete game changer for me because I was just like, this is amazing. I mean, for 3.5 years, I felt like I was in some sort of a brain fog.
I know what
You
you
know, and
mean.
someone switched on the light, like,
Suddenly you realize that you're an adult with like adult
it was
interests.
incredible. Frankly, like all this, the full-time mom stuff is so much more difficult than being a part-time mom. You know, so much easier.
Mm,
And it was a win-win on all counts. It was great for me.
mm,
It was brilliant for my marriage.
right.
It was it
Yes.
was really it was great for my kids because I
Mm,
mean, like my older one started becoming a little bit more independent. Yeah, and it was great for the company.
mm,
Because here was a trained, qualified resource who was back.
mm,
So this kind of journey that I went through myself,
mm.
I just started questioning all the women around me.
So you didn't stay
No,
comfortably where you were.
no,
It was finally
but
coming together. It's all good. You're like,
Mm.
no, how can I make this really difficult for myself?
I tell you what, I think that's why it's that kira of that impact that I had tasted really young.
Hmm.
Yeah, where you see a problem and you want to
Hmm.
fix it.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I didn't recognize the problem till I went through it myself.
Okay.
Yeah. And then when I started questioning all the women around me, so once I realized that this is great to get back to work,
Hmm.
it means I have to get everyone back to work, right?
Right.
So I started questioning all my friends and my family members and became this really pesky person that why aren't you
Hmm.
getting back? Why aren't you getting back?
Hmm.
And they told me all the challenges they were facing in getting back to work. And one of them that they said was that companies will not take us back
Or even if they want to go
even if
back.
they want to go back. So
Hmm.
then I started asking all the companies I knew, and we actually know a
Hmm.
lot of companies because we are part of these, organizations which are
Hmm.
entrepreneurs organizations and
Hmm.
corporate organizations. So I started asking all of them
Hmm.
that, hey, if a woman wants to get back to work, will you hire her? And pretty much everyone said yes.
Hmm.
So I was like, so what's going on over here?
Hmm.
And then I started researching it. Actually, I read Lean In by Sheryl
Hmm.
Sandberg.
Hmm.
That opened my eyes up even more,
Hmm.
right? Because I was like,
Hmm.
oh my God, 1 second. So this is not just me and my friends.
Hmm.
If the CEO of Facebook can
Hmm.
feel this, that means every woman is feeling this.
Right.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And then I started researching the numbers.
Hmm.
When I saw the numbers, I was just like, what? I mean, out of 100 college grads in India today, 45 of them are women,
Right.
which is a huge testament to the work done by our mother's generation.
Right.
Out of 45 of them, only 20 of them even start working. So I'm
Right.
going to change that. Okay. These numbers are actually evolving right now. I'll tell you the
Hmm.
numbers I had found when I had just
Hmm.
started.
Hmm.
So out of the 45 college grads,
Hmm.
okay, only 8 of them start working.
Oh my God.
Exactly. Most of them didn't even get into the workplace because, fathers were educating their daughters to find a good husband and not a good
Right,
job.
right. It was like finishing school, right? College was finishing
Yeah, and
school.
you need that stamp of that college degree,
Hmm,
abhi
hmm,
shadi kara
hmm.
lo. And then once you have a good husband, who needs a good job anyway?
Right, of course. You can be nursery teacher.
Absolutely. Only the same hours that your child is,
Exactly.
yeah, in school. And then out of those 8, 4 of them drop out of the workplace and don't get
Right.
back.
I
So,
saw a stat where it said only 4% even reach upper management.
oh yeah, absolutely. Then there's a whole different challenge altogether, right? When
Right,
you look at it from a
right.
company point of view,
Hmm,
at the entry level, they'll have 30% women.
hmm.
At the management level, 10%. At the CXO level, it's 1%. I mean, it's ridiculous. So when I started like just researching, talking to
Hmm.
people, seeing these stats, I wrote another one pager.
For your father?
This time,
He's
my
like, yes, what
yeah,
have I been trying to tell
this
you?
time, no, no, no. Actually, he did not see the business angle of it. No,
Really?
he did not. So this time, though, luckily, besides for writing that one
Mm,
pager to my father,
mm.
my husband and my brother had joined that
Ah.
cadet of people who are shooting these ideas
Hmm.
against. So I sent this one pager,
Hmm.
and then I heard nothing
Hmm.
from anybody.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, fine. I'm just, I guess, this is some random thing that I've thought of.
Hmm.
Obviously, this has no legs.
Hmm.
And I was going around in my life.
Hmm.
Yeah. And then my brother was visiting. He lives in Bombay. He was
Hmm.
visiting
Hmm.
Bangalore. And he was like, hey, by the way, I read that one pager you sent.
Hmm.
And that's really shocking. And if those are the kind of numbers
Hmm.
that are existing in India,
Hmm.
and if you think you can solve it, then you must solve it.
Ah.
And again, so at that stage, my kids were like 1 and 4 years old.
Still very young.
Very young,
Hmm.
exactly. Not in full-time school.
Not
Neither,
really, yeah.
neither was in full-time school yet.
Hmm.
And it was a very difficult decision
Hmm.
to start a company at that stage.
Okay, so this is like the moment. I want to stay
Yes.
in this moment,
Yeah.
right? So let's first take the gender stuff out. Just say like, here you are in a job that works for you.
Yeah.
Whatever that
Yeah.
job may be, whatever
And
gender
huge
you
growth
may be,
potential.
right?
Huge growth potential.
Huge growth
Yes.
potential, all of that. You're
Yeah.
terribly smart. You know you're going to do well. You know you're going to thrive, right?
Terribly hardworking.
Yeah, yes,
Yes.
clearly, in so many one pages.
That's right.
And so at that point, I know you come from an entrepreneurial background as well on both sides,
Yeah.
right? What you married into, what you were raised with. But even so, there must have been a part of you that said, like, after all, this is no longer like the college thing. Acha, AP, I'll bring it back. This is like now you're saying, I want to do this for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
I'm somehow going to make all of this stuff work. And it's no longer just one simple thing of, oh, bringing AP back to India. This is how do you get women
I know.
back to the workplace,
Yeah.
which is massive.
Yeah.
So, did you do a one pager for yourself of pros and cons, or you just said, okay, fine, my brother seems to think it's a great idea, there we go?
No, there was huge amount of self-doubt.
Hmm.
And huge amount of questioning, do I really want to do it?
Hmm.
Yeah, so I took actually good 3 months to think whether I want to do this or not.
Hmm.
And in order to figure that out, I actually reached out to a lot of people I knew.
Hmm.
And I still have that little black book, okay, where I used to
Oh.
go, I used to just write. I used to go meet them and I used to write. And these were all like, other people who I knew were founders or, doing really well in their careers. And I used to meet them, like people from my family. I met everybody. Okay. And I used to ask them about what they thought, right? Like, say
Did you
this.
ask them, should I do it? Or did you ask them, how did you think about your decisions?
No, I actually talked to them about this problem.
This
Yeah,
particular problem.
this particular problem. I talked to them about like, hey, this is the problem that I have chanced upon, right? What are their thoughts about it?
I
Yeah,
see.
how would they go about solving it? What are the challenges they foresee? Why has it not been solved yet? But at the end of every conversation, I used to ask them one question, which was that do you really think that if my priority is my children, do you really think I should become a founder?
Ah.
Okay, and all the men would look at me like this. They just like ignore that question, okay, and move on.
Like, why is this even a question?
Like, what
It's
kind
like,
of a question
is the
is that?
sky blue? Yes.
And then finally, it was, of course, a female mentor, okay, who looked at me when I asked that, and she said, Neha, you've got to make a decision, and then life will adjust around it.
Wow.
And I'll never forget those words.
I have never had anyone say that to me.
And that's it. That's when the penny dropped. Okay. And I said, you know
That's
what?
fantastic.
Yeah. And it took a female mentor, of course, to say that,
That's so empowering.
Yeah.
Like, I'm getting the chills. It's like,
Yeah.
wow, what a way to say it. I want to
Absolutely.
run home and tell my daughter.
No, really. She said, you just make a decision and your life will adjust around it. Your kids will be fine. Your home will be fine. Your husband will be, because you will make it fine. Yeah. If you decide not to do this, also life will adjust around that. Yeah. And the penny dropped, and I said that, okay, let me start taking this seriously because it was I absolutely agree with you, Lakshmi. Jumping into the world of entrepreneurship is not a decision one should take lightly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a very big commitment that you're making. And I think it's easier to jump into it lightly when you're much younger, like I did the first time around. Because of that first time experience, I also knew what it takes.
Ah.
Yeah, the second time around, I had my battle wounds, right? Like, I mean, those 2 years when I was running Paragon, I only worked. I used to go out at night and I used to come back and I used to be back on my desk working.
Right.
And because it was an educational center which worked off school hours, I was working evenings and weekends.
Right. Of course. Yeah.
And I didn't care because, I loved it. So, but this time I was very wary that am I going to be able to put in the kind of hours that entrepreneurship requires, and am I willing to like bring that absolute madness into my life, which already feels mad enough. But for me, really, it was just that I think this problem needs to be solved and somebody needs to solve it.
So you're passionate about the
And
problem.
I have the capability to solve it. I have the resources to solve it. I have this huge opportunity to solve it. I don't see why I shouldn't solve it.
It is as simple as that.
Yeah.
Can I tell you my story? You'll die
Yes, I would love
laughing,
to hear that.
you know. And this is like, I don't even have the excuse that I was young or anything. So I was a co-founder of First Post, but it was like a incubated, it would be like if your family decided to incubate a startup within,
Sure. Like an
right?
entrepreneur.
Yeah. Exactly. So it's a very different kind of experience, right? I mean, the money's kind of already raised for you and all of that. And I was in Bombay and I was running First Post, all of that. And actually, my help, who had always, taken care of my daughter, I was a single mom. She started having issues with her child. So she said, I can't stay in Bombay. Can you believe that? I quit the job and said, okay, I'll do a start.
Wow.
Because I can't do a job anywhere without Rani. Because, that's the thing, because I was a single mother, right? And I
Yeah.
didn't, my parents had gone. So I was like, how am I going to have an ambitious career
Yeah.
and still have a child and still have childcare, right? And the only answer, this is how ridiculous it is, was a startup.
Yeah, but so many women, when they want to get back to work, they come and tell me they want to become an entrepreneur. And I'd always ask them why. And they say, so that I can get flexibility. And frankly, I mean, I'm sure you'll agree, this is the opposite of flexibility.
Well, it is flexibility in some sense,
Sure.
in the sense of you never stop working, right?
Exactly. So, I mean,
It's
I would
horrible
frankly
because you're
love to
always
have, yeah,
you're
I'd love to
always
have a
working.
9 to 5, 9 to 6
Yeah.
job. I mean, I'd love to like get to work at a particular time and leave work at a particular time. I mean, with this, it's the opposite, right? Like,
No.
yeah, you're
And
always
that's the
on.
thing. I was working till like 12 o'clock, 1
Yeah.
o'clock, waking up
Yeah.
at 6 in the morning because my child also didn't have boundaries, right? Didn't have
Right.
any sense of. I realized what a bliss it was to like leave for office. Your
Yes.
fucking child knew you were at work. But if
Oh,
you're in the next room, your child has no
yeah.
concept that
Yeah.
you're working. She's just like, you're
No, and
hanging
that's why the
around.
pandemic was so difficult for most
Right.
women, right? Because
Exactly.
everything was on top of your head. And it was
Yeah.
on top of their heads only.
Yeah, and looking back, I wouldn't have, I was sort of lucky-ish because we started with broadsheet or whatever. We started with something that was at least manageable. I
Sure.
couldn't have done a startup of your scale, stumbled into that and said, oh, I'll be doing it with daycare,
No, 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 no.
childcare.
1 second. Be very, very clear about the fact that it wasn't that scale when I started.
Ah,
Okay, so one of my mentors had also told me that you need to think about where you want to be 5 years from today.
right.
Yeah. So I said, okay, fine, great advice. I stood in front of a whiteboard and I put down some numbers. Okay.
Yes.
So yeah,
This is very familiar.
I put down some numbers in terms of, oh, if there are so many women on the platform in 5 years, it'll be amazing. If there are so many of them who get back to jobs, it'll be amazing. If there's so many companies, it'll be amazing. And I was like, okay, fine, this looks good. Let's start. Before we hit year one, we had already achieved those numbers.
Oh, wow.
Exactly. But if somebody had told me that, when I was standing in front of that whiteboard and somebody had come next to me and said, ha, this you're going to achieve in year one, I'd be like, are you crazy? I can't start this. So I didn't know.
So that's interesting. So, because my next question was going to be like, how did you define success for yourself? So, your notion of success is like these numbers 5 years from now.
Yes.
And your problem is that you got too much success too fast.
Yeah, I mean, well, it was it was a slight problem because yeah, I wasn't expecting it. Okay, but I mean, actually, the bigger problem was that in my I think in 2016. So I started this in March 2015, and in 2016 I got my first term sheet, and I wasn't raising money, and I had to tell the investor no.
Oh, wow.
Okay, I actually won a startup challenge, and I didn't know that the prize money, which I thought I'll get as prize money, and I was so excited about it, I didn't know that that prize money was actually a term sheet.
Oh.
Exactly.
And you're a finance babe, huh?
Yeah, but it didn't say so. It didn't say it didn't say so anywhere. No fine print. And there were Facebook credits with it, so I was super excited, and I went after it and won the pitch. And then I got a term sheet. And when I saw that term sheet, that's where so the success um, didn't automatically give me that euphoria of accepting that investor money and going to town with it.
But don't you think it's because it came too easy? I mean, you didn't have to.
Hustle for it? No, not really. I think the reason why I said no was because I didn't think that the business was ready for it. Sometimes I very strongly believe that if you raise too much money too early, okay, you don't actually work as hard in building a strong, sustainable, scalable business. And also when you're building a business for investors versus building a business for your users and your customers, they're very different businesses that you build.
So, going back to the idea of defining your success, getting away from the numbers, how did you define what success would look like in your business? Like,
No, it was very clear for us. It was how many women managed to get back to work.
now,
Yeah, when I started, like that was what success was. How many opportunities are we able to, pull out for women and how many of them get back to work? It's just that because we used a business model that was built for scale. So the only reason, by the way, I used a business model that was built for scale was when I saw the numbers that are out there. Yeah. So I knew that, okay, fine. Even if not in year one and not in year two, eventually I'm going to have a business model that can scale.
Right.
Yeah, and solve the problem of a million. Right. A million. That time felt like such a big
Yes, a
number.
lot.
Today we are at 5 million women on the platform, by the way. And that's why I use technology. Okay. That's why I built a platform. That's why I went the product way. I could have also done it as a training center, which I had done in the past and I knew. Or I could have done it as a placement agency. Yeah. But when I did the math, I said, my success will come from how many women finally get impacted by this. And I'm going to work as hard. Okay, no matter what model I use. If with that kind of work, if I can impact the lives of 100 women or 100,000 women, I might as well do 100,000.
Right.
Yeah.
So, take me from that journey of saying here is a problem that women don't go back to work. They want to, but they don't. Companies say they want to hire them, but they don't. How did you take that and reach your platform? Like, what are, I mean, I don't want, obviously, that would
0
take
to 1
hours.
journey.
Yeah. No, but basically, if you could help someone, because that's where people get stuck, right?
Yeah.
They see a need,
Yeah.
right? Like, but a need is not necessarily a business, which is what your father was trying to tell you, right?
Yes.
So how do you take a need and turn it into a business? Like, that's also part of, like, do you want to be a founder? Is also, do you have a business, right?
Yeah, but luckily I live in Bangalore, right? So I attended a lot of these accelerators and incubator programs and all of that. And I remember one of them once told me when I was putting together my business plan and I was trying to figure out the revenue model and all, one of them told me that you don't need to figure out the revenue model right now. Okay. You just figure out why the users will come to your platform. What is the problem you're solving and how you'll solve it. And I was like, what? What do you mean? I don't need to figure out the revenue model. Okay. But I think at the very start, that made sense. Okay. Because if I could actually figure out what the problem was and how I was going to solve it, then you can also figure out how to monetize that problem. Yeah. Frankly, it's a much deeper core of the business than saying that, what, by solving this problem, I'll make so much money. So let me solve this problem. Yeah. Versus saying, this is a problem that exists, which I want to solve. Okay. And then you add the monetization to it. Then you're actually creating something of far more value to your customer.
Right.
You
You're
know,
not starting with how will I make money. That is not the question you ask yourself
yes.
first. Though now the conventional wisdom is the other way, right? It's like, oh, why aren't you making money? Because there are all these startups that 6 years later have gone through gazillion billion
But
dollars.
that's what that's what 6 years later, right?
Mm.
So you have to figure out how to make money.
Mm.
Okay. At the end of the day, we're running for
Mm.
profit
Mm.
ventures. Yeah,
Mm.
for
Mm.
profit, not for
Mm.
losses. Okay.
Yes.
So we do need to figure out how to make money. But you don't need to stop the start by thinking about that.
Hmm.
Yeah. At the very, very start, you think about how can you solve the problem.
Okay, so you think about how you can solve the problem, right?
Yes.
You say, this is the problem, this is how I can solve it. And you said you went the technology way,
Yes.
right? Which is also requires a lot of upfront investment.
Not really.
No?
No. And this is where lots of
Ha.
reading helps.
Hmm.
Okay. So the Lean Startup. I mean,
Hmm.
that's one of my favorite books.
Yes,
It's
mine too.
brilliant. Yeah. And that's where I learned about
Hmm.
MVPs, the minimum viable proposition.
Hmm.
And I learned that an MVP should be something that you should be embarrassed to show your friends and
Hmm.
family. Okay.
Hmm.
That's what an
Hmm.
MVP means. So that's what I did. I got jobsher.com was up and ready in 1.5 months.
Hmm.
It was a basic WordPress site that I got
Hmm.
a small agency to create for me, and we were live.
Hmm.
Yeah. So it was hardly any investment that I put in it.
Hmm.
I put together a very small team. We were like 3, 4 of us. Okay.
Hmm.
And again, also all women returnees,
Hmm.
obviously. And when I started, there were 20 companies on the platform.
It's still 20.
But
At
20,
least. Be
but
good.
20, but 20, no, 20 free companies.
Oh.
20
Oh, I
companies,
see.
20 companies who
I
had
was
said,
I was very impressed. I was
no,
really started
no,
with
not
20
at
paying
all.
companies.
No. 20 companies who I went and said that please come and
Hmm.
list your jobs for free on my
Hmm.
platform
Hmm.
and hire women returnees.
Hmm.
Yeah. That also, by the way, only 20 said yes.
Hmm.
Okay. Because many of them said,
Ah, you're giving it for free. They're like, no.
even for free. No, because they were just like, oh, women returnees, you know. They were like, are they really serious about their career? We don't want to hire kitty party women. You know, we had hired a mother, but then she left. So now we don't hire mothers. We heard all of this. Okay.
And this is like when you first asked them, they said, of course, we want to hire women, but apparently not
Yes.
women with children, is
Yes.
it?
Yeah. Oh my God. There's one company who told me that, we have figured out the exact right age that you should hire women.
Hmm.
If you hire them too young, then they get married. If you hire them right after they get married, then they'll have their first child. Then they'll have their second child. Then there's a sweet spot in between where the children can't be too young.
Hmm.
But then once the children become older, then they have to go for their board exams. Then the woman has to take care of her elderly.
Oh my God.
I was like, you please don't hire women. Okay, that's it. Seriously.
Yeah, his wife has a lifetime job apparently.
I know,
As far as he's
seriously. And he's not paying
concerned.
her.
And he's not
Yes.
paying her.
So, but that's it. So that's, I think the beauty of the start is to
Hmm.
think really, really small
Hmm.
and just get started.
Hmm. Yeah.
If we get inundated by, oh, where will this go and what all can this do and, how much money can I make from it and all of that, you're never going to start.
Hmm.
Yeah. So, I literally had a small sample size. Like I actually, in fact, one of my first advisors,
Hmm.
who's still with us today after 10 years, okay, Dhruv Shenoy.
Hmm.
I had reached out to him because I wanted him to conduct some sort of a market research.
Right.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I was a true business student,
Yes,
right?
of
Like,
course.
let me figure out my TAM and my.
The Wharton grad in you.
Yes, exactly. So I reached out to him saying that, oh, can you conduct this whole market research study for me? How many women are out there? What is my TAM? How many companies are there? Blah, blah, blah. He heard it, and this was he runs a marketing consulting company, okay? And he heard me through and everything. He says, I don't think, Neha, you need any such research study, okay? Instead, just get started.
Hmm.
I was like, okay. And he's still my advisor, by the way, thanks to that moment. And that's how we did. So, because only when you actually put something out there,
Right.
that's when you really learn.
Hmm.
Okay. So, like, for example, we had, once we had like lots of jobs on the platform, we started seeing what are the kind of jobs that women are going after. We started seeing what are the companies that usually say yes to get these women back. We saw where are these women quickly being able to get back to work. Right? Then over time, we saw all the other gaps that exist. I mean, at that stage, so I think at the end of the first year, we had 10,000 women who ended up coming to the
Right.
platform, which
Which
by
is
the way,
great.
I know, which I would have not thought of
Right.
possible at that stage, right? By the end of the first year, by the way, we were monetizing it. So we had like, we decided to have our first like online drive. And we went to our companies and we were planning to offer it for free like every time. Okay. But because Women's Day was coming up, we said, let us do this online drive. Okay. And then we were talking to one of these companies, a large multinational, and we were telling them we're having this online drive. Would you like to participate? And we said, sure, we'd love to. How much will it cost? And, my team member and me, Pritha, and we looked at each other. I said, we'll get back to you about that. And we went out and we said, oh, I think it's time we can start charging clients. That's when our business model started, our revenue model started. Yeah. So it literally went, and this is why I think it really helps also to kind of start under the radar. Because the beginning, there is a lot of experimentation and failures that you have to go through before you really figure out what is sticking. Yeah. And at that time, if you don't have an investor breathing down your neck that in 2 years you need to double your valuation and, so I can,
exactly.
so I can get the next round going, you're much better off.
Yeah, and like I was telling you before we started, I read this guy's thread on Twitter, right? A lot of people actually attracted. Now, see, everything that you're saying, I know some kid is like, wow, sounds so sexy. I want to do that.
It's not sexy at all.
I want to be putting those numbers on the whiteboard and be like, wow, I did it in the first year.
Yeah.
Investors are trying to give me money and I'm saying, no, I won't take it. Because there's such a glamour, and that's what he was talking about, basically. So this guy has a job in Google and YouTube or whatever, hotshot, clearly must have been like in his late 20s. His bosses loved him, destined for great things. And there's so much. No one talks about middle management. Everyone only wants to talk about founders,
That's
right?
True.
They're so, and you should be doing founder like you. You were like ahead of the curve, ahead of Mark Zuckerberg, senior year, undergrad,
Yes.
right? I mean, look at those Zepto kids.
Yeah,
everyone's
it's
like,
incredible.
now you shouldn't even go to college. You should do it.
That's right. Get the app, get the admission though, and
Get
then
the
don't
admission,
go.
yes, so that you can be like, oh, you know
Yes,
what?
yeah.
So he quit all of that. He clearly had a good idea. He recruited good people. He had people, he was a techie, he was in the industry, he raised 2 million just like that. Apparently, the whole thing even worked. He had sort of proof of concept, but he hated being a founder, right?
Sure.
And that is the thing I think no one talks about, is that when you say solving the problem, you literally are solving every problem that could possibly exist, right?
That is true.
So you want to talk about that, like, why do you think a guy like that, and he was he's lovely. He just said, I realized I'm so much happier working at a company and sort of making my contribution, and knowing that I have everything doesn't rest on me, right? And knowing that I have time or energy or whatever. He said, I'm just not a founder.
Yeah.
And I realized that I was in love with the idea of being a founder, but I'm actually not by nature a founder. Do you want to talk about that? I mean, because clearly by nature you are a founder.
Yeah, but Lakshmi, please, in this 10-year journey, I would be absolutely, wrong if I say that there were so many times when I wanted to give it all up, right? I mean, and I don't think there must be any founder in the world who didn't go through all those lows and say, why am I doing this?
Right.
Yeah, let's just get done with this. It's kind of like, I think, the myth of Sisyphus, where he rolls that rock over the mountain.
Yes, up the mountain.
Up
and
the
then he's
mountain
rolling
every
back.
day.
Yes.
And every morning when he wakes up, that rock has, rolled back down, and then he has to roll it back up every day. That is really the journey of a founder.
Right.
Okay. Every day there's a new problem to solve. And yeah, some problems are fun to solve. Some problems are really painful to solve. Yeah.
So then what is the founder mindset? I mean, other than being a masochist, which clearly
Oh my
you have
God.
to be.
You really have to be. That's the thing. I think you have to thrive on problem solving, because you also have to remember that if there weren't problems to solve, then you wouldn't really have any work to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, because you have to thrive on just solving problems. I think
Mm.
that's very, very important. And that's why
Mm.
the reason for becoming a founder should be very, very clear. It shouldn't be, oh, I have nothing better to do, or
Mm.
I want something that is really flexible,
Mm.
or that I want to make tons of money.
Mm.
Okay. Because all those reasons are not the ones that are going to keep you going when the shit hits the fan. And the
Mm.
shit will hit the fan very often.
Yes.
Very,
Yes.
very often. Yeah. But if it is a problem that you really believe in solving,
Mm.
yeah, then when the shit hits the fan, you'll first of all you'll be used to solving problems. And when
Yes.
the shit hits the fan, you will know
Used to
that
your
you,
misery like the
oh my god,
lobster
you're
in the
used to
pot.
exactly, like you'll thrive on that. But when the shit hits the fan, you'll know that the reason why you started this was because you knew it will be difficult. Yeah,
Mm.
nobody is saying
Mm.
it's easy. We're just saying it's going to be worth it one day.
Right.
Yeah. And that definition of one day, frankly, is different for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, look, in the end, I may have stumbled into it for whatever reason. And, so I stumbled into Broadsheet with this very silly idea of like, oh, I don't want to go and take that stupid Hindustan Times job because they'll make me work, 14 hours in Delhi, Chichi. I have no childcare. Who wants to do that? To actually, so when Broadsheet shut down, I had such an out. It was pandemic. It was March
Mm.
2020. My startup shuts down because we had a founder split. I could have just sort of sat at home and said, you know what, I'm going to take a year to figure it
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
I started Split in June.
Wow. In the
Yeah.
middle of the pandemic.
Yes, we ended end of March and in June 1st we launched. Like
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
me and two people had stayed with us from Broadsheet. And that's when I realized
Well, I'm glad you did, by the way,
yeah.
because you're my daily dose of news. I mean, if there's one thing I read every day, it's the Splainer, and I kid you not.
Oh, but that's when I realized I was a founder.
Yeah, yeah, you had me to
Yeah.
serve.
Yes,
Yes, because I
exactly.
was very, very upset when the broadsheet didn't exist anymore. I was like, where am I going to go to get updated really quickly and in a very interesting way? That's what I love
Right.
about it.
And so many people wrote in saying, I can't believe you're doing
You're
this,
right. Yeah,
right? And
I
that,
can't believe you're
yeah.
doing this to me.
I know it was very personal. But yeah. And I think that's when I
But that's how
realized.
we felt also, like when the
Mm,
pandemic hit and jobs
mm.
went down to zero.
Really?
Oh my God, yes. Like when the pandemic hit, everybody shut down in terms of
Mm,
hiring. So contracts that we had in place were being rolled back. And we didn't know how long this was going to last,
mm,
right? So my revenue went to nil. Exactly. So, of course, and then Sequoia sent that email. We all
mm.
read it. So we tried to cut as many losses as we could. It was Friday the 13th, Friday, March
Of
13th,
course.
exactly. And I remember the town hall that we did on that Monday following, that crazy announcement was,
No, you had to tell them about the announcement first.
sorry, no. So Friday, March 13th was our last day of working in the office.
Hmm.
It was a day that we laid off quite a few people ourselves.
Right.
Yeah, because our revenue we saw was dwindling, dwindling, dwindling.
Right.
Eventually, it had gone down to zero, and we had to cut our losses
Hmm.
as much as we could.
Hmm.
And that was a very, very tough decision to
Yeah, I
make
can
as a founder.
imagine.
I mean,
That's
those are those
heartbreaking.
moments where you hate being a founder. You
Right.
know, you
Yeah.
wish you could just like have somebody else take those decisions and you
Hmm.
have to like execute them on that person's behalf. Yeah, but to be the one taking that call is
Hmm.
really difficult. Yeah.
Hmm.
And it was also the last day we were going to work from the office. We were announcing
Hmm.
work from home till we don't know when.
Hmm.
And so that Monday, when we had a town hall with the ones who were remaining,
Right.
I remember that day we made a vow that we will still stay standing strong
Hmm.
because we owe it to the women we serve.
Hmm.
Yeah, so even if we get this massive revenue hit, yeah,
Hmm.
we will cut our losses as much as we can,
Hmm.
but we will still stay standing because somebody's got to do this.
Right.
Yeah, and the pandemic is going to be really tough on women's careers in the short term. We took a call even then that, you know what, this will be the best thing that happens to women's careers.
Really?
Really,
That
really,
that's
we
very
did.
optimistic.
Okay, and the reason, and because we knew how much women love working from home. Okay. So we knew that suddenly now work from home is going to become a reality.
Right.
Yeah, I remember in April itself,
Yeah.
I signed a contract for our Her Rising event, a virtual career fair. It went virtual for the first time. It's a huge annual career fair that we host every August. I paid for that in like April or May in the heart of the pandemic, knowing that, you know what, things will be better. And also, founders come with this stupid optimism.
Of course.
Yeah, and idealism. Okay, there's no other way to be. So, but that Monday, the reason why the rest of the people also stayed, okay, was because everybody felt strongly that we have to achieve this mission and vision of the company.
Right.
Yeah, and again, so it all comes down to that one thing, which is what problem are you trying to solve?
Yeah. If you're not passionate about the problem and you don't believe that if you didn't solve it, no one else would, I think that's the second part, right?
But
That-
you know, the thing, there was search before Google.
Yeah, but no one would do it quite the way you would.
Huh, exactly.
I mean,
Exactly. So nobody
I'm
can-
old enough to
sure.
have
Yeah.
used Netscape. Please, it was crap.
That is
Mark
actually very true.
Andreessen, I don't know how he's wandering around the countryside looking like he's such a guru because he got his ass kicked by Google.
Yeah.
No one remembers that anymore. But
You're right. You have to
yeah.
believe that you can solve it better than
Yes,
anybody else can.
exactly.
You're right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You have
There
to
has-
have
So there has to be
that's the ego.
optimism. There has to be
Yes.
optimism.
Ego.
There has to be idealism. There has to be a lot of ego.
Ego. Yes.
And naivety. Very much so.
There are two questions really mainly left. One is talking about your fundraising. You told me it's been hell for the last couple of years,
yes,
right?
Yes.
So the first one came very easily, but when you wanted the money, I
Right.
think we should cover that.
Yes, yes.
Right?
And that's perfectly
Yeah.
because we just talked about pandemic. So right after the pandemic, you became profitable and then I raised money.
Right.
So that kind of works
Right.
well.
The last one, I'm not sure because I think you kind of answered it because you said you went the tech way because you wanted to scale. I wanted to talk about the fact that it's very hard. Tech and scale have become like kind of almost in the VC world a kind of
We
what
should
can I
talk
say?
about that.
You know,
I saw your
that they-
question on
yeah.
AI and everything.
Yeah,
No,
because
those
people
are
do
very
all
important.
kinds of businesses, right? I mean, not everything is tech driven,
Yeah.
right? I mean, Deepika Padukone can doesn't need tech in her yogurt, huh? आप जाके yogurt बेचो, they'll say yogurt में ये तो दही है, इसमें tech क्या है?
That's right. There's a personalization.
I know exactly. Or does it mix? Does the AI mix
As
the
a IoT.
curd just for you? Okay. All right. So let's talk about the fundraising, then we'll end
Sure.
with that. Yeah. Now we're at the pandemic.
Yes.
And you're actually doing well.
Well, yes. So surprisingly, we went from like rock bottom
Right.
to suddenly doing fabulously.
Right.
Because again, as we had very optimistically predicted, the pandemic was the best thing that happened to women's careers. Yeah, suddenly, you know, work from home was a reality. Even if it wasn't full work from home, companies just had a more flexible mindset, which is what women wanted all these years. And there was this huge war for talent that happened, because of which companies realized that, oh my God, you know, there's this whole talent pool lying outside the workplace. We need to figure out how do we reach out to them. There's nobody else doing it. And from a women point of view also, you know, families started realizing that actually this was a very bad idea to only rely on one breadwinner.
Right.
We have another possible breadwinner in the family. Why don't we rally
Yeah.
around her?
And she'll stay home and take care of the bachas also.
Perfect, exactly. Triple shift. Yes. So suddenly from both sides, from both demand and supply, everybody started realizing that, oh, women should work. Yeah. And so it's so
So
far.
feminist.
Yeah, so far, okay, we were always the largest players, but I used to sometimes think we're the largest fools. Okay. Now the tide turned and we were still the largest players. And so now we were riding the tide. We were on top of the wave. Yeah. And so then finally, I think 6 years into the journey, we turned profitable.
Right.
Yeah. And that was a great moment. It felt really good. Okay. And we turned profitable. We were profitable for like 2 years and all. And then I got really bored.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I forgot. You don't
Uh,
like to be comfortable. You don't like it when it's easy. It's like,
I
why am I not miserable
I
enough?
was just like, this is so boring. I mean, yeah, like this is growing. It's growing well.
Mm.
We got into this incremental growth phase.
Mm.
Where there were enough companies coming, enough jobs coming, enough money coming, and then enough women going.
Right.
And then I was like, now what? And then I realized, frankly, that now is the best time to really scale.
Hmm.
Okay, because companies are ready, women are ready.
Hmm.
Yeah, but to scale, we're going to have to invest more into the business.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I had already invested quite a lot.
Yes, over 6 years.
Yeah, in the first five,
Yeah.
6 years.
Hmm.
And the amount that I need to invest now,
Hmm.
frankly, was above what I was comfortable investing myself.
Sure.
Right. I realized that now is the best time to get the VCs in.
Hmm.
Okay. Because I already had my team in place, I had the platform in place, I had
Hmm.
the user base in place, and I had a business model, a really strong business model in place.
Yeah. I mean, it showed profitability.
Exactly. I was one of those few profitable startups
And
going to fundraise.
you'd gone the distance. 6 years is,
Yeah. No,
not a
by the time I
small.
went to fundraise, I was 8 years in.
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, 7 years in. So anyway, I got my pitch deck ready.
Hmm.
And I was like, this is going to be an easy one, right? And
Right.
people, and every day you were reading about all these startups raising
Hmm.
crazy amount of money. You had Apna, who had become a pre-revenue unicorn in the blue collar
Right.
space.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I
Right.
said, this is going to be an easy sell,
Hmm.
right? And I wanted to raise only $5 million.
Nothing.
Nothing,
Hmm.
nothing compared to
Yeah.
what people were raising.
Nothing
And
by
after
like
all
Bangalore
these
standards.
years,
Yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
and I go out there
Hmm.
and I just hear no, 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 no.
And what is the reasoning? Because they can't see scale.
No, actually, one female VC friend, not a
Hmm.
friend, she's also a Penn alum, and that is why
Hmm.
she and she's a woman.
Hmm.
So at least she sat me down and she
Hmm.
explained to me why their
Hmm.
company wasn't interested.
Hmm.
Okay. And she said, look, Neha, we are interested in businesses that will exponentially scale.
Hmm.
And we've done a lot of research and thesis in the careers tech space.
Hmm.
Yeah. And we don't feel that this will exponentially scale. So it can
Hmm.
become a highly profitable business, but we don't know if it'll become a highly scalable business.
Oh my God, do they say this to every female
Oh
founder?
my
How
God,
did
did
they?
you hear
Yes,
it
this is
too?
all I heard. They told me the same thing over and over again. And I'm sitting there going, but
No, and we are sitting, and I'm giving you a comp right there, right? You had Apna, who's a pre-revenue unicorn.
oh,
Yeah, and by the way, you can look up what happened to Apna after
of course.
raising all that money. And then I realized that, okay, fine. Maybe they're not ready. Maybe then this is not a VC fundable business.
This is not a venture business.
Yeah, maybe this is not a venture business. I'm like, then screw it. Okay. And I was actually ready. For me, like, I was the first investor in my business, and I was still a very positive investor in the business. Okay.
Yeah.
So I had finally decided that jo bhi ho, now that I have seen the opportunity to scale, I will scale this no matter what.
Right.
Okay. Okay. And then, of course, the topmost female investor in the country said
Right.
yes. Yeah, just when I was actually about to give up.
Kalari.
Vani Kola. Exactly. And when somebody like Vani says yes, okay, then you, of course, just
Yeah.
take it and run.
Right. And then everyone else also.
Of
lines
course,
up,
absolutely. So once Kalari became
Yeah.
a lead investor, I got another lead investor. 361 also came on board. I got a bevy of angel investors. In fact, then I had to like force my lead investors that please keep some money aside, okay, so that all these angels who I had gotten in touch with, who were always interested as angels, but I always wanted my lead, right? All those angels can also come in. So we finally raised 4 million because also, by the way, keep in mind funding winter hit that year.
Right.
So we finally raised 4 million, but we raised from people like Kalari 361, Puneet Dalmia, Ranjan Pai, Anisha Singh, Zia Modi, Prameen Zaveri, all of them. Yeah. And it was the largest investment ever in the women's career space.
That's brilliant.
Well, good and bad.
Why?
Great, because finally there was a good enough sizable investment in the women's career space, but it's pittance. It's nothing.
A man in that
It's
with that
$4 million.
would have got like at least 50 million.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, I think I also was very sure though when when you run a bootstrapped business for so many years, you're also very conservative about burn.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because also that burn is literally you're burning your
Yeah,
own
your own money.
yeah. And then when external money also comes in, you treat money like money. Yeah. And you're careful with it. So I also raised what I needed to raise. Yeah. So that's why I went to the market only asking for 5. It's not like I was asking for 50. Okay. Because I needed 5. That's all I needed.
Huh. But that's great, right? Because you
Yes.
were not, it was about what your business needed, not
What
what you
my ego
needed to
needed.
signal
Yes. And
that,
not
oh,
what my
look,
yeah.
my business is so cool. It
No,
raised so much money,
no,
right?
no. It wasn't what about me and my ego. It was about my business and what my business needed.
Do you think, but Vani thought this was a scalable business.
Yes,
So
yes.
that's interesting. As a
No,
woman investor, she said,
and I'll tell you why Vani thought it was a scalable business. Because Vani had been my mentor for many years before that. So she knew my mindset.
right.
Okay. She knew also that I have what it takes to change the business
Right.
in the direction to make it scalable from a VC angle.
Hmm.
And that is literally the first thing that she and I did when we even announced the funding.
Ah.
We changed from JobServe to HerKey.
So tell me, how did it become a VC, a venture business from being not a venture business?
I mean, go
I mean,
figure.
so,
Yeah,
no,
sure.
yeah.
From
What is
their
what is the
lens, from
journey
their
from
angle.
jobs for her to HerKey? I
So
guess.
until while it was Jobs for Her, and again in that pitch, right, it was a very jobs first platform. Yeah, which means that it was kind of like a treadmill business, So women would come in. If they found a job, they were gone. If they didn't find a job, also they were gone.
Right.
Right. So you got that churn was very high,
Like a dating app,
which is a
really.
problem. Yeah. Verse, so one, we had to figure out how do we increase stickiness. Yeah, in the platform. Second, from a company point of view, also, it was a very recruitment heavy monetization model. Yeah.
Sure.
Which means as recruitment cycles go up and down, your revenue gets impacted also hugely.
Right.
Again, stickiness
Again.
was very
Yeah.
important. Yeah. So this whole move from JobServe to HerKey was to ensure that we build in a much more stickier product. Yeah. Also, by the way, it was very obvious that just ensuring that woman found the job was not enough. Yeah. If you actually want women to succeed in their careers, it has to be much more than that, right? Like you actually have to figure out what will get them to stay in those jobs. How do you increase retention? And most importantly, how do you get women to advance in their careers?
Right.
Yeah, how do you get promotions and hikes and upskilling and all of that to happen? And that is why we moved it from JobServe to HerKey, where HerKey became a communities first platform. Yeah. And through that community, you can find opportunities, which were the jobs. You could also find learning.
You can upskill.
Yeah, but you can upskill, but not just in the hard skills. You can also get coaching, mentoring, and you can network. You can build those strong professional networks that women need. Now, this becomes a exponentially scalable model.
Right. And your ARPU goes up because you can.
Absolutely. And my CAC was always low.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And so that's what we have done now. In the last 2 years since I raised that money, Vani has actually been my, strongest ally in actually expanding our business model to ensure that we add on these facets to it. And by the way, all that time keeping that woman in mind.
Right. Of
Right?
course.
That woman at the
No, no,
center of
of
what we are
course.
doing. Because again, we're constantly looking at, okay, how do we see what are her problems when it comes to why is she dropping out of her career? Why isn't she getting back? We started off with the jobs. What else can we do in that journey? Yeah. And then how
But a
do we
lot
build
of
on
it is
it?
societal, no? It's that mother-in-law.
That's why the
doesn't wanna-
communities part.
Ah.
That's why the communities part is so important because it's a changing in narrative that you need. So today on our platform, by the way, we have two types of users, her and for her.
Oh, I see.
So we've actually invited the entire ecosystem to come on the platform to be there to support women's careers. Yeah. And so these are some of the pivotal changes that have happened in the platform. Now, by the way, I'm going to go and raise my second round. And let's hope the story is different.
It will be. They always say the second time is easier, no?
The second child was definitely easier. Yeah, hopefully
Yeah.
second round will be too.
Okay, one last question. I understand that you use tech because it was, necessary for scale. And we've already talked about how VCs want scale. Because they want scale, then it has to be tech because they feel like there's no scale without tech. Oh, that's what they say, right? And the example I gave you in the break was, but Deepika Padukone wants to go and sell, dahi,
Right.
and a very expensive dahi. They're like, okay, oh, actually that can scale, right? And turns out she was right, right? I mean, Epigame is a great success story, but no one was sitting there and saying, I need AI to mix your dahi or personalize your
Personalized
dahi,
the
dahi. Like, do you think that's also, I feel like, one is that it's a very Indian thing. It's not true of actually the US. The US, actually, there is funding. It may not be as big as Silicon Valley, as glamorous as Silicon Valley, but there is money for small businesses
Yeah.
who could possibly scale. You know, pizza places. Like, actually, now it's changing. Like Le Bon, I think, is a great example. Or Third Wave. Now you're getting kind of things that have no AI. It
Right.
is about
Yeah.
going and getting a cup of coffee or having great bread or a pastry. But do you think like that is very limiting? Because a lot of women are not necessarily in that tech and big scale. So I feel like for women founders, that's like the second kind of hurdle no one talks about. Because that was my experience. What do you want? You want to get your news, right? You want someone to
But
like basically figure out what's happening in the world and say it to you in a way that it's not dumbed down, but it's interesting and engaging, and then you can go out and feel incredibly smart about what's happening
yeah.
in the world.
Yeah. I
You do
feel it.
not.
I feel it
Yes.
after reading this planner. Yeah.
What you don't want is an AI. You don't
Mm,
want Chat GPT doing that for you. In
mm,
fact, the reason you trust the product is because you know they're people.
right.
It's a brand you trust and you like the people who you can sense there's a human being. But precisely because it's very hard to explain that to anyone
I know, but
here.
Lakshmi, frankly, okay, so I'm a big proponent of tech, of
Hmm.
course. Yeah. And I actually really feel women need to scale up in tech. Yeah. Because frankly, if tech is the future,
Hmm.
we want women to be part of that future. Yeah. And
Hmm.
with AI is, I also very strongly believe AI is going to rule our world. Frankly,
Of course.
it's already ruling our world, and we have such less female voices in AI that it's scary. Okay,
Hmm.
because that AI is being built by men for men of men.
Ah, it's being trained on material created by men. Like,
Exactly.
no?
Okay, so that's worrisome, right? Because all those
Mm.
biases are going to go into AI, and that AI is
Mm.
going to rule our world,
Yes.
and it's going to make decisions for us and
Mm.
judgments for us. Okay, and we are not going to control it.
Mm.
So as women, we need to actually own tech and build
Mm.
tech, and we need to
Mm.
control AI and build AI.
But
Yeah,
women are in tech, no? I don't
but not
feel.
enough. No,
Mm.
no, we are very under represented in tech, and
Again, in the education, there are plenty of engineers,
oh,
but they
yes.
never
Oh,
end up
totally.
in.
India, in fact, has the highest number of female engineers
Hmm.
in the world.
Hmm.
Yeah. But they don't stay in tech in their
Hmm.
careers, and especially not in emerging tech and in niche technologies. Okay.
Hmm.
Now, you gave the example of Splainer.
Hmm.
I think looking at AI as augmenting our intelligence is the
Hmm.
right way of looking at it, right?
Hmm.
Like in your
Hmm.
case, I definitely want Lakshmi's voice when I'm reading this planner. Yeah.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
am I interested in everything that this planner writes every day? Maybe not.
Hmm.
Right.
Hmm.
Maybe if I could get a personalized version of this planner,
Sure.
depending on where I scroll fast and
Sure.
where I stop and where I
Sure.
click, okay,
Hmm.
that might be great. Yeah.
Hmm.
Maybe that way you'll be able to increase your audiences also, because some
Hmm.
people might be interested in your fund segment, some people might be interested in the marketplace, some people are
Hmm.
interested in business and politics, right?
Hmm.
And then, of course, you can use like AI to kind of do the first drafts or the first editing or the
Sure.
first curation of those
Hmm.
articles, and then you'll add on to that, right? I actually would find it difficult to find an example of any business that cannot be further augmented using tech or AI
I
in
think
today's day and
AI
age.
is a sort of like a slightly different. But first of all, AI is not smart enough right now.
But
I
it's
mean, it
getting,
will
but it's
be.
getting really smart, really fast,
Yeah, in some things.
scarily so.
Right. In some
Yeah,
things and
yeah,
not other things. But
yes,
yes, but not as fast as Sam Altman likes to claim, but
sure,
smarter, but definitely smarter than it used
yeah.
to be, right? Um,
So, but that is why VCs are going after AI and tech.
Right.
One, of course, as it's a buzzword, right? Like, I mean,
That's the other
there's a
thing.
lot
It's
of
sort
this
of not
stuff.
everything is AI because that's what I'm trying to say. Forget Splainer. I feel like Splainer's still on your phone,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But I
So
think there's
that's
so
tech right
many,
there. Your
yeah,
app is tech,
yeah,
right? It's a tech platform that you're
exactly.
using.
But what about all these other kinds of businesses which I feel like don't get much funding, don't get much support? Whether, for example, I always hate the idea that startup always signifies a certain kind of business,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, why can't it be like beauty? Why can't it be,
Yeah.
any kind of thing?
Yeah.
But all of those things are treated as niche, but actually they're not,
Yeah.
right?
No. So the niche word is a problematic word because I mean there are enough investors who think that the women's space, the femtech space
Yes.
is niche. I mean,
Mm,
really, we're serving 50% of the world population, and they think that's niche. Now the thing is that one, of course, when you compare it to America, sure, we've not reached that stage of evolution where you have
mm,
enough large VCs in lots of different diversified
right.
areas of
Mm,
investments,
mm,
right?
mm,
And so because a small number, and also think about from an LP's point of view, it's a small number of LPs.
mm,
So those LPs also are going after
right.
similar kind of
Sure.
funds. At the end of the day, it's all demand and supply, right? Now, if LPs
Mm.
want to invest in VCs that are focused in tech, then your VCs will be investing in tech.
Yeah, even angel list, right? Like these, even the angels are not very angel-like in India,
And again, LPs are definitely moved by the
Mm,
latest buzzwords,
right.
But like
Mm,
D2C, for
mm,
example,
mm,
they weren't tech companies per
mm,
se, yeah.
mm.
But because D2C became such a buzzword, everybody then was starting
Right.
funds around D2C,
Right.
yeah. So I think those kind of hypes and trends will come and go.
Right.
At the end of the day, if a company is frankly profitable, well run,
Hmm.
can show scale. Okay,
Hmm.
I would think that they should be able to raise money, but I think the question is always to ask why.
Hmm.
I,
Hmm.
I actually don't think that every company should raise VC money. And
Right.
like I said, sometimes it can do,
That's the point.
yeah, I think sometimes
Hmm.
it can do more harm than good.
Hmm.
Yeah, I wasn't sure that JobServer/HerKey now should ever raise VC money, right? And which is why I said no in year one.
Hmm.
Only once I reached a particular stage in that company's life cycle that I felt, okay, fine, maybe it will help the company now if I raise money.
Hmm.
I mean, who's to know that if I hadn't raised that money, would it have been as good for the company in a different way? Yeah, sure. You would have still been standing strong.
Yeah, and I think also the thing is, we funded ourselves with actually subscribers.
Yeah,
Subscribers are our investors,
exactly.
and it has actually worked really well for Splainer
Hmm.
and my money and whatever. It has remained very true,
Yeah.
to the people who read it,
No, there are
right?
lots of roads to success.
Yes, I
Okay.
think that is the
And the
point.
thing is, media only hypes
Mm,
up, these big milestones. Every time there's a funding announcement, okay, it becomes this big media hype. I mean, what is there to hype? Yeah, we don't I mean, somebody gave somebody money and got stock in return.
mm,
Yeah, somebody
mm.
has sold part of the. Sure, it's a great signal that the company is doing well, but necessarily not also. Yeah. So I don't think we should really get taken over by this one path to success.
And also, one path to being a founder, right?
Of
I mean,
course.
a founder is not someone who eventually is going to raise venture money and, have a $250 million company or whatever it is, right? You can, have a coffee shop and be a
Yeah.
founder. I mean, there
No,
is.
it's a number of times investors ask me, so when do you think you'll become a unicorn? I'll be like, that is not my aim with my
Hmm.
company. My aim is
Hmm.
not that one day I'll become a unicorn,
Hmm.
okay, and get $1 billion valuation. My aim is that one day I'll be able to impact 1 billion lives.
See, that's the brilliance
While
of it.
while I aim to impact
Hmm.
1 billion lives, if I get $1 billion valuation,
Yeah.
I'll gladly take it.
Right. That's wonderful.
Great.
Like they used to say, "Tumhare muँh mein ghee shakkar."
Thank you, Lakshmi.
That is all for this episode. Next time, we look at other sources of founder angst, including the investor agreement. We'll also be answering questions on this weighty subject, so please put your questions in the comments section and we'll get to them in the next episode. I'll see you soon.